Now, from Washington, D.C., Raymond Arroyo.
A warm welcome to all of you joining us in the United States and the world over. Lots to share with you. Comprehensive immigration reform is speeding through the U.S. Senate and headed to the House. A member of the Gang of Eight responsible for the bill, the junior senator from Florida, Marco Rubio, will join us. And later, legendary author and screenwriter of The Exorcist, William Blatty, is here to discuss the issue of Catholic identity at the nation's first Catholic university, his alma mater, Georgetown. Should the name Catholic be stripped from the venerable Jesuit institution until they comply with church teaching? Blatty, along with the Cardinal Newman Society, has filed a canon law petition in an effort to get Georgetown back on track. Tonight, in an exclusive interview, he'll explain his reasoning. And finally, we've got a special treat for you. Former screen actress and now the prioress of Regina Laudis Benedictine Abbey, Mother Dolores Hart, is back to discuss her cloistered life, the Hollywood career she left behind, and her new memoir, The Ear of the Heart, an actress's journey from Hollywood to holy vows. As always, I want you to be part of the program. You can tweet me at Raymond Arroyo or drop us an email at worldover@EWTN.com. Now here's the brief news from the world over this week. On Wednesday, a federal judge in Philadelphia directed Health and Human Services Secretary Kathleen Sebelius to make a dying 10-year-old girl eligible for an adult lung transplant. Sarah Murnahan has been hospitalized at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia for 3 months with end-stage cystic fibrosis. She's been given a little more than a month to live. On Capitol Hill on Tuesday, Sebelius, who can overrule federal regulations on organ transplant eligibility, refused to waive the rule that a child must be at least 12 years old in order to receive an adult lung transplant. Here's a bit of her exchange with Pennsylvania Congressman Lou Barletta.
Why are we going to let a little 10-year-old girl die because she is 10 and not 12? I'm begging you. Sarah has 3 to 5 weeks to live. Time is running out. Please, suspend the rules until we look at this policy, which we all believe is flawed.
Well, I would suggest, sir, that, again, this is a incredibly agonizing situation where someone lives and someone dies.
Based on their age. Sarah's case is different. Doctors have said that she could survive with an adult lung. It can be modified to save her life. Why wouldn't we do it? Why we do so much bull crap around this place, and we have the chance to save someone's life, and because of some kind of there's no logic to this.
40 people in your home state
But she would be
are
first
waiting on.
But she would be first.
Sir, there are 40 people in the highest acuity list waiting for a lung
Sarah
in Pennsylvania.
would be at the top of that list.
In issuing the temporary restraining order, U.S. District Judge Michael Bailson said that by refusing to set aside the rule, Sebelius had failed to, quote, protect the very few children nationally who are subject to it, adding that the rule discriminates against children, serves no purpose, is arbitrary, capricious, and an abuse of discretion. A hearing is scheduled for June 14th, and our prayers are certainly with the Murnahan family. Cardinal Timothy Dolan and the bishops of New York State are denouncing Governor Andrew Cuomo's Women's Equality Act, part of which seeks to expand access to abortion. According to the bishops, the proposed legislation would ease restrictions on late-term abortions and could expand abortion to all stages of gestation in New York. Cardinal Dolan, in a statement, says the bishops fully oppose the measure and are urging the faithful to do the same. A bit of good news for a few Christian refugees in Syria. President Bashar Assad's troops regained control of the embattled strategic town of Qusair, home to about 10,000 Christians before rebel forces attacked early last year. Most of the town's Christians fled when the rebels gained control of the city and gave them a leave or else ultimatum. Syrian armed forces announced their victory on television Wednesday. The capture of the town near the Lebanese border solidifies some of the Syrian regime's recent gains that have shifted the balance of power in Assad's favor. And as the humanitarian and refugee crisis continues for Syrians, Pope Francis met with the Church's charity organizations in Rome on Wednesday to discuss their efforts in the country. The Holy Father renewed his appeal for an end to the conflict. He recalled the words of his predecessor, Benedict XVI, who repeatedly called for the weapons to be silenced and for a resolution through dialogue and a profound reconciliation between the sides. Meanwhile, a top church official in the Holy Land reports that Hamas is pressing for the Islamicization of Gaza. In an interview with the Italian daily La Stampa, Bishop William Shomali, the Vicar General of the Latin Rite Patriarchate of Jerusalem, said there are obvious signs of Islamicization throughout the Gaza Strip, and Hamas, the ruling party which controls Gaza, is exerting steadily greater pressure to comply with Islamic teachings. That pressure, he said, has been taking its toll on the small Christian minority. Bishop Shomali warned that with the hardening of ideological lines, a peaceful solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict seems more remote than ever. After 2 days of intense debate this week, gay marriage passed a key parliamentary vote in the British House of Lords, signaling that same-sex weddings could be coming to England and Wales as soon as 2014. In an overwhelming 390 to 150 vote, a procedural amendment that would have stopped the government-backed legislation was rejected. The Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, made clear his opposition to the legislation during debate, calling traditional marriage a cornerstone of society. He warned his fellow peers that the law would undermine the family and marriage as the basis of rearing children.
The concept of marriage as a normative place for procreation is lost. The idea of marriage as covenant is diminished. The family in its normal sense predating the state and as our base community of society, as we've already heard, is weakened.
Dr. Welby also made clear during his address that he was not opposed to recognizing homosexual unions as an alternative to gay marriage. A side note, Archbishop Welby will be in Rome next week to meet with Pope Francis. In Venezuela, shortages of basic food and supplies could soon affect the church at the altar. Archbishop Roberto Lucert Leon of Coro said the church has just a 2-month supply of altar wine as the country's sole supplier is unable to maintain adequate production. The Archbishop said importing the wine is very expensive due to the country's weak currency, so the only alternative is rationing. A wheat flour shortage is also hampering the production of communion bread. Despite having the world's richest oil reserves, Venezuela's socialist government has created widespread shortages of food staples and other items, from milk to sugar to toilet paper. Pope Francis offered some blunt, tough talk about, well, tough, blunt talk. During a homily on Tuesday, the Pope rebuked those who distort language for their own self-interest. Reflecting on the Pharisees who sought to trap Jesus with questions, he asked rhetorically, do we speak in truth with love, or do we speak with that social language to be polite, even say nice things which we do not feel? The Pharisees, Pope Francis said, used flattery, adulation, soft words, beautiful words to deceive and to involve others in their deceit. Francis cautioned that hypocrisy is the very language of corruption and urged his listeners to let their yes be yes and their no be no, free of soft words. On Wednesday, the Pope decried a culture of waste where people are disposed of as if they were trash. He lamented a society where men and women are sacrificed to the idols of profit and consumption. Powerful stuff. I've linked my analysis to one of these teachings and the full text of the other on my Facebook and Twitter pages. It is worthy reading. Up next, Senator Marco Rubio is here to talk about his plan to reform the immigration system, the chances of passage in the U.S. Senate, and a few other items from here in Washington. The World Over Live continues in a moment. Stay right there.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
My first guest is the junior U.S. Senator from the state of Florida and one of the Gang of Eight responsible for crafting the immigration reform bill moving through the Senate. Joining us from the Capitol for an exclusive interview is Senator Marco Rubio. Senator Rubio, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Raymond. Thank you for having me.
Now, look, you have been immersed in the process of writing this comprehensive immigration reform bill for months. You've been selling it over the media, going to your colleagues. Yet now you're on the record as saying you can't support this bill and you don't think it will pass the Senate. Why not?
Well, first let me say that, this bill has always been a starting point. We've always said that from the very beginning. That's why we have this process where you file legislation, you go through committee, you get the input of other senators. Our goal has always been here. Remember what our goal is. Our goal is to change the immigration laws of the United States. That means we have to pass a law, not just pass a bill. And so what I'm focused on is what are the input that my colleagues have come up with, and quite frankly, a lot of them have made some very good points. Now, we can't be closed-minded. If people have a good point and they raise a good and legitimate criticism, that should be addressed. And that's what I'm trying to address here with this issue. So I will never give up on immigration reform. I think it is an issue that's important for our country. We have to deal with our broken legal immigration system. We have to find a solution for the 11 million human beings that are living among us in the shadows. And we have to make sure that there isn't another wave of illegal immigration in the future. And the good news is that there is consensus on reforming the legal immigration issue. There's even, unlike 5 or 6 years ago, there is a consensus, among Republicans included, that we have to do something to accommodate those who are here illegally now. The only thing that's still in debate is how much do we need to do to ensure that we don't have another wave of illegal immigration in the future. And that's the one issue that I'm focused on now, because if we can get that part right, we are going to finally get to do something that has eluded policymakers for the better part of 3 decades.
But in its present form, you cannot support this bill.
Well, you know what I really want to not get to is these ultimatums. The bottom line is that what I have said to people is that in its current form, quite frankly, I don't know if anybody would support it, including many of the authors, because we all agree that there are some amendments that need to be made to the bill, including technical amendments. So I don't think that's just true for me, that's true for everybody. But here's the bottom line. This bill in its current form isn't going to be the bill. We all know that. We all know there's going to be changes made to it. And the only thing I'm arguing for is that those changes bring on the support of the people we need to make this a law. And by the way, what they're asking for in exchange for their support is very reasonable, very responsible, and it's something that's doable.
I want to get into that in a moment. Let's talk about some of the specifics in the current legislation. 43 times this bill at various points gives discretion to the Secretary of Homeland Security, Janet Napolitano. 7 times it gives her sole and unreviewable discretion. Given what we've seen in the healthcare legislation, is this wise? Is this warranted at this moment, allowing her to waive application requirements or allow counsel for people coming into the country, et cetera?
Well, first of all, that's one of the issues that has to be addressed. That is one of the complaints that people have raised, and that's one of the things that we're going to have to fix if we want to pass a law. I would point out, however, that not all waivers are created equal. Some, quite frankly, don't make a lot of sense and they need to be addressed. But I'll give you a real-world example. One of the requirements we have at the 6-year mark for people to renew their temporary status is to prove that they've been gainfully employed and that they've been consistently gainfully employed since the time they applied. Well, what if that person's been injured in an accident and been left in a wheelchair? What if that person suffered a stroke and they have not been able to work? What do you do then? Well, you need a waiver in order to accommodate that humanitarian concern. So there are some waivers that are necessary because of situations like that, but they should be narrow and they should be specific. And that's one of the changes that we're going to have to accomplish.
Senator, many of your critics are saying the problem is this grants status and legal status before there is border security. You have been shopping around a compromise that would allow the Congress to be in charge of border enforcement. Wasn't this tried in 2006 with the Secure Fence Act? That didn't go much of anywhere. How will this be different, the proposal you're talking about?
That's one of the things that haunts us, is past efforts that haven't worked out. So I'm not saying that Congress needs to sit and supervise the border. What I'm saying is that Congress, rather than leave it to the Department of Homeland Security to draw up the security plan, that we should draw it up ourselves and put it in the bill so we know what it is. One of the doubts that people have is they say, well, if you leave it to the Department of Homeland Security to draw up the border plan, it won't be a very good plan. So I say, well, let's just not leave it to mystery. We know what needs to be done. We've consulted with the border agents. Let's specify what that plan should be. Your second question is, how are we going to do that? How are we going to legalize people before we do the border? Well, initially I felt the same way, and then I looked at the issue more carefully. And here's the problem. What do we do in the meantime? So let's say it takes 4 years to secure the border.
Right.
What do we do for the next 4 years? Do we ignore the people that are here illegally? Do we create a scenario where if you get caught, you have to leave, but if you don't get caught, you get to stay? So now we've got this weird cat and mouse game going on. And what if that number grows from 11 million to 15 million? I think we want to identify the people that are here now. We want to get them assimilated into America's economy and into America's society. We should remember that the vast majority of these 11 million people are not here to take. They are here to work. They are here to provide for their families. They may have broken the laws, and there's consequences for that, but they have come for the same reasons that our parents and our grandparents came, and we should welcome that so long as they have to meet certain conditions, like a background check, start paying taxes, pay a fine, etc.
Senator Rubio, there is Senator John Cornyn's amendment that, if you believe the reports, you have been working with Senator Cornyn on this amendment. It would be presented to the full Senate, and under this idea, 100% control of the U.S.-Mexican border would be established and have to be established before any legal status could be extended to these immigrants seeking citizenship here eventually. Do you support that plan?
Well, let me clarify a few things. This is the Cornyn amendment. I've worked with him on border security, but this amendment is his product. Number two, his plan does not condition legalization on the border. It actually goes ahead with the process of legalizing the people that are here. Now, that means the bill passes, and people are going to be able to apply and receive a legal status that will allow them to come out of the shadows and begin to work and pay taxes and provide for their families. What it conditions is the green card process. The permanent process is conditioned upon 100% awareness of the border, the ability to monitor the entire border, and the ability to apprehend 9 out of 10 people that cross it. And that becomes a trigger for legalization. Now, there are some of my colleagues here on the Democratic side that don't want that. They say that that leaves the path to citizenship too uncertain. But I think we've got a problem there, because we can't have a bill that provides certainty on the green card, but does not provide certainty on border security. So trying to bridge that divide is what I'm working on, and I think Senator Cornyn's amendment is a very good starting point in that regard. And,
so you support the amendment?
Well, I think the amendment needs some additions to it that I've suggested to them. Again, we haven't seen the full text of the amendment. All we have seen is a memo that he puts out. I'd like to see some things added to it, but I think that it is a very strong work product, and I think 99% of what he has in his amendment are things that could gain broad bipartisan support.
Now, Senator Rubio, the bishops of the U.S. oppose any enforcement triggers, any border security enforcement triggers before extending legal status. How do you reconcile your position and the position, frankly, of many Catholics on the Hill with the Catholic position and where the bishops are on this?
Well, at the end of the day, I think the bishop's responsibility is to the spiritual and moral and physical welfare of the flock, and I think that that's what they're exercising in saying this, and I understand that, I do. As a policymaker, I have an obligation to the United States of America as well to ensure that it's safe and secure. And so what I'm saying is, let's do both. Let's provide certainty for these folks so they can get legalized and begin to work. And let's not condition that on anything but them having to pass a background check. We all agree we don't want dangerous criminals here. They have to pay a fine because there has to be consequences for wrongdoing. And they have to get in line behind the people who have done it the right way, because we don't want to punish those who have done it the right way. But they will get their legal status. They're going to get to work. They're going to get to travel. They will no longer be illegally here, and they're going to have certainty. On the border side, however, we have a national security obligation to this country to ensure that we secure our borders for our own sovereignty and for our own security, and to ensure that there isn't another wave of illegal immigration in the future. And I think we can balance and achieve both of these things, and I think that the final product is something that the bishops will be able to support.
I want to delve into the personal side of this for you. This is no doubt, and looking at how this is playing out, it has risky consequences for you politically. Many of your Tea Party supporters who swept you into office are upset that you're even involved in any way with this effort. How much of this is rooted, Marco, in conviction and in your faith, your advocacy on this immigration reform?
Let me tell you, it's all rooted to some respect in my faith and also in my personal knowledge of this issue. But I would say to you on the political consequences of it, first of all, the vast majority of Republicans are prepared to do something to accommodate the 11 million people here in this country illegally. The only thing they're asking for is for the border to be secure. By the way, that's not just Republicans, that's the vast majority of Americans. Poll after poll shows that Americans support a pathway to citizenship if and only if the border is secured. So I think politically that's fine. But beyond that, when you ask about my faith, look, my faith tells me that God has a plan for all of us, and our job is to cooperate with that plan, to have faith, to do what we believe our conscience tells us is right, and then let the chips fall where they may. So, you know, at the end of the day, what's going to happen here is God's will. That's always going to happen. And the question is whether we cooperate that in the spirit of faith, or do we want to go off with our own plan and chart our own course in our own life. And, you know, that's not just the story of immigration reform. That's the story of our life. I mean, that's truly the purpose of our life, is to be the best version of ourselves that we can be, to be who God created us to be. And that requires us to have faith that if you do the right thing, God's plan is going to work out. It may not be what you wanted, but it certainly will be what you needed.
Senator Rubio, wouldn't it be easier to roll this thing out in a piecemeal approach where you attack one piece of this problem as you go, rather than trying to create a comprehensive immigration reform package?
Well, it probably would be easier to do it in separate bills, each dealing with subject matters on their own, but it must be dealt with comprehensively. It doesn't have to be one bill, because they're all interrelated. For example, the single greatest driver of illegal immigration is not people coming here to go on welfare. It's people coming here to work. And that's why you need an E-Verify system, not just a fence.
Right.
But you also need, we also have a legitimate need for workers in this country, particularly in places like agriculture. So right now there is not a reliable and cost-effective way for agriculture to get temporary seasonal workers. And the result is they're going to come anyway. They're just going to come illegally. So if we could create an agricultural workers program and a guest worker program where people can come here legally, you wouldn't have as many illegal immigrants. So that has to happen as well. And then you've got to deal with the 11 million that are here now, because you can't leave that unresolved, because as long as that's a problem in our country, all these other issues become more difficult to manage. So all these things are interrelated, and you've got to do them all. And you've got to do, they can be done sequentially, but they have to happen. Because you can't do one piece without the other. It doesn't work.
Yeah, we're almost out of time. Very quickly, Lindsey Graham, your fellow gang of eighter, or eight of ganger, he's suggesting that this bill is going to pass the Senate. You have suggested in recent days that it may not. Well, what's your feeling now?
Well, I don't think it would pass if the vote was today. I can tell you there are at least 4 or 5 Democrats that have expressed their inability to support this bill unless the border security measures are strengthened. And virtually every Republican that I've spoken to on the Senate side, but for some of the members of the Gang of Eight, have said that they need to see the border issue resolved before they can vote for it. So here's the good news. We're not there yet. The good news is that the vast majority of members of the Senate are, unlike 5 or 6 years ago, are now prepared to vote for a pathway to citizenship. But they're only willing to do so long as we can ensure that it's not a burden on the American taxpayer, and so long as we can ensure that there isn't another wave of illegal immigration in the future. I think that's achievable, and so that's the good news, and that's what I want to focus on.
Final question. We've been seeing this IRS scandal play out in the last few weeks. Money spent on these ridiculous conferences in-house, hassling people because of their religious or political convictions. Will we see any substantive reform of the IRS in the Senate or the House?
I hope so. I think part of it is just the reform of government in and of itself. I continue to believe government has a very important role to play in society. We need to have a government, and it needs to be efficient, and it needs to work well. The problem is any government, and I don't care who's in charge, Republican or Democrat, any government, when it gets too big, not only does it begin to infringe on civil society, on the faith community and others, but it begins to create abuses as well. I think that's when you look at the culture in the IRS, it is a culture of a runaway agency, unaccountable to no one, that's gotten so large and bureaucratic that it's impossible to control. So I think the cautionary tale is government that gets too big gets too unmanageable. And I think that's one of the problems we're facing now. So I think if we could simplify our tax code, it would simplify the IRS.
Senator Marco Rubio, thanks so much for being with us. I hope you'll come down, cross the street, and come see us sometime.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me, Raymond.
Thanks, Marco.
Thank you.
He is perhaps best known for his 1971 mega hit novel, The Exorcist, not to mention the Academy Award-winning screenplay for the film version. That landmark book captured the struggle between good and evil. Now, my next guest is engaged in his own battle of sorts. He is a 1950 graduate of the oldest Catholic university in the United States, Georgetown, right here in D.C. But Bill Blatty contends that something has changed at his alma mater. Its Catholic identity has slipped away. My next guest filed a canon law petition late last week with the Archdiocese of Washington, asking that the Catholic status of the university be reviewed and that the name Catholic be rescinded until they comply with church teaching. Here to explain why he felt compelled to take canonical action is William Peter Blatty. Mr. Blatty, welcome back.
Raymond, thank you. Nice to be back with you again.
Let's start with this 198-page complaint. in a press release, you said this is now the Borgia University. Tough talk. What does that mean?
That's a little over. We will go. Let me give you the background,
Okay.
Raymond. First, I want to make it very clear. I love the Georgetown that I graduated from. And without them, most of the things that I value and treasure in my life, in particular the strength of my faith, I wouldn't have without them. So along comes a new Georgetown. And this is a Georgetown where, well, I don't recognize it anymore, Raymond. My petition, incidentally, some of the headlines have it wrong. I'm not primarily seeking to strip Georgetown of its Catholic identity. We're trying to help them retain it, recapture it, by going back to doing what they used to do, what they were intended to do from their origination, which is, you know, to nourish and strengthen the Catholic students' faith, their formation, and provide them along the way with the tools to defend it intellectually and through reason. We're hoping they comply with that. I would never do anything deliberately to hurt Georgetown. This is very much akin, this process, this petition, to trying to pressure someone that you love very much into going into rehab. And they can do that by recapturing their original intent, their original beauty as a defender of the faith and nourisher of the faith, as opposed to what they seem to be now.
What is it that most upset you in recent years? What are the incendiary moments or events that you said, this is the straw that breaks the camel's back?
There was one, and it happened last year. Kathleen Sebelius.
The HHS secretary.
Right. Now, it's one thing to invite a speaker to your campus. They invited Larry Flee, invite who they want, what do I care? But they honored her by making her a commencement speaker. Now, this is a woman who, as governor of Kansas, was so fiercely and aggressively pro-abortion that she was actually forbidden by her bishop to receive communion. She vetoed every abortion bill, safeguard bill that came across her desk, things as innocuous as parental notification. And she was cheek by jowl buddies with the Herbert Gosnell of his day, that bloody butcher of infants, George Tiller. And this, the university chooses to address at commencement the graduates. Before that, they created an atmosphere on the campus where many, many years ago, typical of it, a group of co-eds were able to gather in front of one of the Catholic chapels, I'm not sure whether it's Dahlgren or St. William's, and with impunity and no fear of any kind of discipline, chant over and over again raucously, "Keep your rosaries off our ovaries." That's Lindsay Lohan, you. And what we have now is a toleration of choice. We have Hoyas for choice there. Raymond, I'm going to go off more generally on abortion. And this is going to be tough for some people to take. There are Catholics, there are parishes where the pastors, a few of them, deliberately do not place a prayer for the unborn innocents in the prayers of the faithful for fear of offending some of the parishioners who are pro-choice, and they are pro-choice because they wouldn't know the tenets of their faith from a sinkhole in Tallahassee, Florida. They have had no formation. Where's your camera? Hoyas for choice, choose this, would you please?
It seems what you're asking Georgetown to do is comply with Ex Corde Ecclesia, which was a 1990 apostolic constitution.
Yes.
John Paul II approved it, and it laid out the distinguishing characteristics of a Catholic university or any Catholic institution, but particularly Catholic higher education.
Yeah.
You are asking for the Archbishop of Washington
Cardinal Wuerl.
to set a timetable, conditions to apply, to appoint a board of visitors, to request a formal Vatican visitation, and to strip the university in the meantime of its Catholic credentials and the ability to advertise itself as a Catholic institution, yes?
No, not in the meantime. Not until a judgment has been made. Not until either the Cardinal or, if necessary, the Vatican, if he does not act, makes a decision on what they want them to do. And if Georgetown rejects that, and they may want to, then they will be stripped of their Catholic identity. I mean, please, parent, you know, once kids get there and there's all this freedom, wow, they have no complaint, do they? Except for the ones who've written to us and signed petitions saying, I can't talk about my Catholic faith on campus. I get hooted at and ridiculed and called an idiot and so on. This is the oldest Catholic university in America.
And it is because of the Hoyas for Choice, Kathleen Sebelius being invited, the Sandra Fluck embrace, those things, were each of those
Raymond, it's
part of this?
We have 120 pages documenting what we call scandals at the university, which cover any number of topics. No one can be privy to that but the Cardinal and the Vatican. Not even Georgetown is. But I can tell you, oh, curl your hair.
Georgetown University, their Director of Communications, Rachel Pugh, has said, she cited the undergraduates' 2 semesters of theology that are required at Georgetown and philosophy requirement, masses offered on campus, campus ministry programs, and she said, quote, our Catholic and Jesuit identity on campus has never been stronger, Bill Blatty. Academically, we remain committed to the Catholic intellectual tradition. We're proud of the countless ways our students put their faith into action through service and justice programs. You would say what?
This is totally delusional, if not hallucinatory. The kind of Catholicism she is talking about is among the things she mentioned there, the practice of making sure there's one Jesuit at every table when they have these big dinners and homecoming or fundraising thing, you know, as if there were, you know, the flower decoration on the table. It's a Potemkin village. Say, philosophy courses are what? Name them. Name them. We had to take, in addition to, you know, New Testament and theology and ethics and all of that, and your English major, you are obliged to take a year course in logic, one in ontology, one in epistemology, and one in cosmology. Did I mention cosmology and ontology? I mean, those are philosophy courses. What are they talking about? The philosophy of Immanuel Kant? Probably. It's cheating the parents. There are parents out there who are not just sending the kids to Georgetown has a great academic reputation. They get a great job. No, it's because they want them to have a deeper formation in the faith.
So you're really concerned about truth in advertising.
That's
You want them
exactly
to be what they say.
That is why the very first letter that we issued asked for Georgetown to become better, honest, and more Catholic. That appeared.
Why go down the canonical path for filing what is essentially a canonical lawsuit?
Oh, it is.
Why not just pressure donors to stop giving and take a PR strategy? You did that already.
We asked them a year ago, just stop giving them money for a year.
You've stopped giving them money?
I stopped giving them money years ago. I have, my mother's scholarship fund is set up there. Naturally, it's fairly bounteous. After all, they gave me a full scholarship. But no, that's enough. You know, once I moved here and saw what was going on,
What does Georgetown mean to you today?
Georgetown to me still, perhaps because of the constant evictions we were subject to, my mother and I being thrown out of one apartment after another for non-payment of rent for years afterwards, after graduation, I always thought of Georgetown as my home. And even though it's a little more distantly now, it's still warmly and fun. I still do. I do.
It is also, incidentally, the place where you were inspired to write The Exorcist. I mean, the kernels of it really fell out there, yes?
That's one of the great things that they gave me. I mean, had I not received that scholarship, of course, I'd never gone to any college, but I would certainly not have been sitting in a New Testament class in 1949 listening to Father Gallagher talking about a case of possession and exorcism going on somewhere in the greater neighborhood there, which, you know, eventually inspired me to write You Know What.
Amazing. How far will you go with this canonical complaint?
This is it. There isn't anything more that I can do. It's pointless to make public appeals. This is strictly a matter for the cardinal, and if he feels that he doesn't want to or is not entitled to act, it will be, it'll go to the Vatican, or we'll take it to the Vatican, certainly.
And there is some precedent. In 2012, the Pontifical Catholic University in Peru was stripped of its pontifical and Catholic credentials.
That is right. And may I say, I mean, the Holy Spirit has looked after this canon petition. He gave us Kathleen Sebelius and Peru in almost the same time period, and he gave us Pope Francis. I love this man, but he is an iron fist and a velvet glove, and he's not going to flinch, and he's not going to take any guff, and he will not be at all timid. You know, I see him embracing this and saying, "Hey, come on, about time, please." It may be the same. I have no idea. I've never met Cardinal Wuerl. It may be the case with him. You know, the Cardinal did, through his official publication,
the Archdiocesan newspaper,
when Kathleen Sebelius was chosen Speaker at commencement, he let out a blast at Georgetown, which was most unusual in that he publicly named the president of Georgetown for excoriation. I'm hoping, what am I now? I'm hoping he is thinking, Blatty, what took you so long? Thanks, you gave me now a reason to do this.
Bill Blatty, thank you for being here.
We'll
see you again soon.
Raymond. Thank you.
You can find out more about the petition that Bill and the Cardinal Newman Society filed with the Archdiocese of Washington against Georgetown University by visiting the website gupetition.org. When we return, she was an actress just reaching the peak of her career when she received and accepted a very different casting call. Mother Dolores Hart is here to talk about her journey from Hollywood to the convent when The World of Her Live continues. Stay right there.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over Live. My next guest was just 18 when she began a very promising acting career in Hollywood. She starred with Elvis Presley in his second film, Loving You, in 1957. She went on to work with Anthony Quinn, Montgomery Clift, Robert Wagner, just to name a few. Her life took a very different turn when she left Tinseltown behind to join a small, rural Connecticut convent in 1963, at the height of her acting career. She's author of the recently released memoir, The Ear of the Heart, an actress's journey from Hollywood to to holy vows. Please welcome back to the program Mother Dolores Hart. Mother, delighted to see you again. Thank you for coming back. Yeah, every 4 years or so, 3 years or so, we have to
let me out.
They let you, they let me see you. Tell me why you felt you had to write this book. This in the introduction, you almost make this seem as if it was a personal obligation.
Well, it became so because the gentleman who's writing with me is Dick Danute, and a very, very dear and old friend, someone that I knew in 1957. He was the one of the big wigs at Globe Photos, and he did so many wonderful things for me. We'd walk into a party, and he'd say, "Mother, this is so-and-so, and you last saw her there, and say this." And if I picked up this, and it went into a film, he would cut it out because he'd say, "They'll think you're drinking."
Oh. So he was protecting you.
He was indeed.
How great.
And anyway, long story short, he said to me, "We've got to do this memoir because if you get too old, you won't remember anything." And I said, "I think you too, Dick."
So how long did it take you?
10 years.
10 years you've been working on this. Wow. Let's talk about this amazing life. And it is a storied and incredible career, and then your personal vocation, your religious vocation, and the way it plays out. Let's start with the fact that you were not raised Catholic.
No.
You converted to the faith.
No.
How did that happen?
I was sent to a Catholic school by my grandmother because she didn't want me to cross the streetcar tracks. And at that time, Catholics had to fast from midnight. So I would have to go having my breakfast, and the children would all have sweet rolls and chocolate milk after they finished Mass. And so one day I said to the sister, "I would love to have bread with the children." She thought I meant the Eucharist. So she said, "Well, you'd have to go to school, go to Catholic school. I mean, you're in Catholic school, you'd have to go to a Catholic class and learn about the religion." So I went home and I said to Granny, "What do you think?" And she said, "I don't know, if you get a free breakfast, it's good for me."
Well, that's one way in. Let's talk about this attraction to acting. What was it? When did you first realize you were drawn to this profession and wanted to be an actress?
My grandfather was a movie operator, and I used to go with him up on the booth. And he rested, slept, and every time the reel would go to a certain part, he'd say, "Wake me up," and I'd get a nickel a reel. So I would watch the films, and I was fascinated. Well, first of all, I wanted to find my father, who had been picked up in Chicago by a talent scout because they thought he looked like Cary Grant. And the big film that was, and so he went, and my mom said, "I better go with him or I won't keep him." And I stayed in Chicago with my grandmother. But I'm telling you, when I watched those movies, I said, "I really want to do that." And my grandfather was a real patriarch because he said, "You know, honey, I've seen them all, and I think you can do it better than anybody." And so when a man tells you something as a little girl, you really know you believe it.
And so you did.
Yes.
You went on and did this incredible body of work, including Elvis's King Creole and Loving You.
Yes.
And there was that famous kiss, and that everything you
yes,
read about Dolores Hart, they always mention the. Aren't you tired of the kiss?
Well, they say it's the kiss, the longest kiss in history.
Oh, really?
So, and when you get to my age, you don't mind it anymore.
People are always asking you about it, though.
They are, but it's because they loved him. And I mean, what else can you say?
Yeah, he was such an icon to so many. And what was it like working with him? I mean, he was so young at that point, and really a kind of tender country guy.
He was a little sweetheart, very, very shy. He called me Miss Dolores, and he asked me out once, and I said, "Oh, Elvis, I don't think we should go out while we're working. We should wait till after the film." After the film, he didn't ask me.
You were finished. He was on to somebody else.
Right.
Well, you go on to play Broadway, and while on Broadway, a fellow cast member suggests that you go to the Abbey where you have made the rest of your life. What made you go to that Abbey? What were you looking for when you went?
I was looking for a time to rest. I really was. But when I got there, I had this sense of inner stability, peace. And I don't know, when you say to somebody, why did you marry so and so? If they really did a good job, it's because they fell in love. And all I can say, I loved it. I loved being there. I loved the people. And I didn't go immediately. It was 5 years before I actually entered.
Yeah, you were engaged. I mean, you were engaged to a man at this point.
Yes.
Tell us about that relationship, because this relationship with Don would go on from the time you were a young woman, really, to very recently when he passed away.
That's right. Don said to me one night at a party, I don't think you are having any fun. You're not with it. What is wrong with you? And I said, nothing. And he said, you tell me that you love me. And we were in the middle of the road. He was driving. I said, Don, that's a heck of a thing to say to me right here. We're going to get killed. And he said, and he stopped the car. And he said, please, will you find out what is wrong? Well, I went back to my apartment, and I thought, I better go to the Abbey. It wasn't an Abbey yet. It was just a monastery. I said, I better go there and have a talk with Lady Abbess again, who was in just the head. And I said to her, she said, what is it that you want, Dolores? I said, I want to marry Don. I want to make $1 million. I want to win an Oscar. And she said, well, why are you here? And I said, because this is what I know I really love. Well, Mother Benedict talked to me, and she said, you have to hold this now until June. This was December.
Right.
Don't tell anybody, and I don't want to be another June Haver where you go in and come out. And anyway, June Haver was a friend of mine, so
you didn't want that fate to happen.
No. So anyway, I said, but I've got to tell Don, because I'm engaged to him. And she said, of course. So I met Don at the airport, and we sat down for supper, and he said, okay. I said, Don, I'm going to enter there. Well, you have never seen a man swear so much and say was so mad.
Really?
Oh, he was. And then finally he stopped and he said, Dolores, I'm going to tell you something, that all love relationships don't end at the altar. I'm going to stay with you in this. And I thought, oh, first girl that comes along. Well, Don came twice a year to visit us. He was one of our best friends. Don never married.
Wow.
And
he lived nearby.
And he lived nearby. And he died just 6 months ago. So
I saw that.
So it was amazing. It was amazing.
Yeah, what an amazing story it is. So you enter the monastery, and you almost left several times.
Yes.
Tell me about those occasions.
Well, one time I just was fed up, and fed up with things that I was angry about, and blah, blah, blah. So I met my friend, Sister David, on the road, and I said, I've really got, and she said, what are you doing? I said, I'm going to leave. And she said, you cannot do that. So I went back to my room. I slammed the door and I locked it. And a couple of minutes later, I hear, and she said, no, you come out here and talk to me. And I said, no, Sister David, I'm leaving. And I turned around and I started to pull my things out.
Boy.
And all of a sudden I hear, what is going on? And I turned right. She has taken the hinges off the door. And she pulled the door and she said, nobody locks a door on the prioress, because she had become prioress then. And she said, you're not going anywhere. You're just in a bad mood, so get over it.
And that was it?
And that was it. We became good friends. So if you want to do something right in the world, have somebody cross you.
Your last film was Come Fly With Me with Carl Malden, who is one of my favorite actors, probably, in my opinion, one of the most underrated actors ever in Hollywood.
One of the best.
Fantastic, on the waterfront. And I mean, we could be here all night talking about his career.
Could.
But tell me what he meant to you, because you all remained lifelong friends, and he was responsible for re-inducting you into the Academy.
That's right.
Tell me about that.
Well, Carl introduced me to his family, to Mona, to his children, and I just loved him for his faithfulness to his family, and an honesty in the man that was unbelievable. You knew why he was that priest and on the waterfront, and everybody did what he said.
He was Greek Orthodox, wasn't
Yes.
he? Greek Orthodox, yeah.
And then I had left the academy in an active way, because the abbess thought, there's nothing that you can do in the monastery and be in the academy. It doesn't make sense. Well, my 25th years of anniversary of vows, Carl called me and said, can you get active again in this academy? We think it would be great to have a nun in our midst, and saying a few things to us. So the abbess said, I don't think I have to worry about you. You've been here 25 years. You've seen it all. Do it.
Great. And so every year you get all those screeners, and you have to watch the films, and you vote.
And I vote.
For the Academy Awards.
I would have voted for Les Miserables this year, but I did. Well, not so
that's okay. You know what? I would have voted for Les Miserables, too. I think it was the best film of the year, and we had Hugh Jackman on the show. So you're in safe company here. Nobody will tell. You were almost in the Manchurian Candidate, I was stunned to learn reading the book. You were in the car in London, and you get a phone call from Frank Sinatra. Tell me quickly how that happened.
Well, I got a call from Frank. I didn't know it was. I got a call of this man who says, this is Frank Sinatra, and we'd like to invite you to come and see about being in our film. And I said, Frank Sinatra? You would call me all the way in London? Yes, this is Frank Sinatra. I said, oh, come on, sing. And he hung up.
That was the end of it. And then he sent the script to you, and at that point it was already cast.
It was already cast, right.
Let's talk for a second about what you think is missing from Hollywood and the media at large today. What's missing, Mother?
Well, besides me.
Yes, besides you, what's missing?
Well, I think that the media has a potential to speak of the people from the heart. And I think they've got to do things that are more risky, to say, what does the body mean to the human being? Because it's the lack of understanding the value of God's creation that turns the body into something to be used or to be molested, or it doesn't really say why we as human beings have been created in the gift that we have. The only thing that the Lord says to us, really, is that after death you will get your body back. Now that seemed, he must have thought there was a lot there if he would have said that.
Yeah. Talk to us for a moment. I mean, as you say that, I'm thinking the media, particularly film, has a tendency, and the media complex that has grown up now around entertainment objectifies the individual, not the person, not the actor in a role, but the actor himself as a person.
Yes.
Isn't that a great danger today, in a way that, frankly, in the day when you were in films, it wasn't quite as exacerbated as it is today?
Well, I think it was naive in those days. And the naivete opened up something that, if it had gone to a maturity, would have been extraordinary. And I think that the media has got to go back to saying, what is the individual's experience? What is the individual's heart saying to them? Not the, as you said, the objectification doesn't give anyone a desire to follow or to move or to be.
Last year, you were nominated for an Academy Award for a short documentary on your life and your relationship with Don Robinson, incidentally. What was that like? And tell me about the inspiration for that particular project.
Well, the inspiration for that was we went to see the
nuncio, Archbishop Sambi, who
Sambi.
That must have been when you came to do the show last time,
Yeah,
in 2010.
So. That's right. And we walked into his, and he said, "Mother, I want to ask you to do a film about consecrated life. You must tell the people what it means to be a consecrated woman." And I said, I can't. I don't have any connections anymore in Hollywood. Yeah. I said, I don't know anybody. They've all died. I was 18 and they were 50. You know. And he said, no, don't give me that. Oh. He said, God will help you. And I said, he'll have to. Because when I go home and tell the abbess, he said, no, Mother, do this. So I left, and I went back, and Reverend Mother David, she said, Mother, we can't do that. You know we can't do that. Just tell the Archbishop we're going to make a movie. I mean, it's not. It's first of all, it's not what a contemplative monastery is for.
Right.
3 days later, we get a telephone call from HBO asking if they could do a movie on our community. And I said, do you know Archbishop Sambi? He said,
Thought
no.
he'd put a call into HBO?
Yeah,
Probably
no.
not.
They said, no, absolutely not. Wow. And so I said to Mother Abbess, what do you think? She said, I don't argue with him. This is coming from a higher authority than I can say no to.
So you went ahead and did it?
They did it.
Pretty good story, along with so many others. The Ear of the Heart. Explain the title before we go. When I first read that title, they sent me a galley of this, and I blurbed it. And when I read that title, I said, The Ear of the Heart. Explain.
I did too. Dick was the one who said that. And they said, they'll think this is a medical journal. But he said, no, Mother, it's the first line in your holy rule of St. Benedict. Ascolta, o file, listen, my son, with the ear of your heart to the voice of the Master.
Well, many ears will be pricked after reading this book. Mother Dolores Hart, thank you so much for being here. The book, The Ear of the Heart, An Actress's Journey from Hollywood to Holy Vows by Mother Dolores and Richard Denute, is available now at bookstores everywhere, online, and of course through the EWTN Religious Catalog. It's published by Ignatius Press. Before we go, a special message to our viewers in the UK. I'll be visiting London in 2 weeks, and on June 20th, I have a very special engagement. I'll be speaking at the Most Precious Blood Catholic Church near London Bridge at 6:30 p.m. The event is open to the public, and I promise we'll have a good time. So I want you all our UK viewers, on June 20th at 6:30 p.m., come join me at the Most Precious Blood Church, which is located on O'Meara Street between Southwark and Union Streets. All the details are posted on RaymondArroyo.com. Well, that's all the time we have. The show continues on Facebook and Twitter. As always, the Twitter and Facebook pages are linked on the left-hand side of the site. And be sure to sign up for my weekly e-blasts at RaymondArroyo.com. Be sure to join us next week. We'll talk about the growth of online dating, Catholic online dating, no less. In the meantime, we'll be scouting the world over for all that is seen and unseen. On behalf of the staff and crew of EWTN News, I'm Raymond Arroyo. Bye now.